Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Concerned Citizens Media. As usual, I have some news to share with you and a couple of videos at the end of the after the reading the news. So here are the news for January 15, 2021. A new TV network, Oromia 11, launched in Minneapolis. A consortium of Oromo business owners and community leaders launched on Monday, January 11, 2021, a Minneapolis-based news and entertainment television network that will be beamed globally with programs showcasing original programming from the Twin Cities, Ethiopia, and other markets. Mr. Safi Galato, general manager of this newly launched network, said, "We don't have enough platforms. There is so much yet to be told. Many stories die with elders." Mr. Galato said initial programming will be delivered digitally on platforms like Facebook and the network website, with a plan to move to satellite delivery within the next 6 months. The Oromo, who number over 50 million globally, inhabit Ethiopia, Kenya, and Somalia, with the largest concentration outside of Africa being in Minnesota. Currently, Oromos do not have a single media that hears the pain and sufferings of Oromos and report these painful situations on behalf of them to the domestic and the global community. So, launching Oromia 11 and other media are encouraging for independent media thirsty Oromo communities, especially for those living back home under government media propaganda. So it's encouraging, the launching of Oromia 11 and other medias. So the last one is my comment. The rest is taken from their website. They announced the launching of Oromia 11. That's encouraging news for media. We are 50 million plus, so we need more media, independent especially. The one we have in Ethiopia is government propaganda. They don't talk to the people. They just reporting the government propaganda. OMN, Oromia Media Network, before it was shut down, it was listening and reporting from every corner of Oromia. But after that, nobody's reporting what is happening in Oromia. So we need more. Ethiopia-Sudan tension continues. In response to Ethiopia's warning, the Sudanese information minister and government spokesman Faisal Mohammed Salah said Khartoum didn't want war with Ethiopia, but its forces would respond to any aggression by Ethiopian forces. Khartoum also accused Ethiopia armed men for the killing of 5 women and a child on Monday inside Sudan's border, calling it a brutal aggression. Sudan also banned Ethiopian airlines from entering Sudanese airspace until further notice. The United States Embassy in Ethiopia issued security alerts on January 13, 2021 for Intoto, Yekka, and the Gulale Botanical Gardens in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Reports of robbery of hikers by multiple armed men who use threats and actual violence if they are resisted. The security alert advises American citizens and others to avoid these mentioned areas until further notice. The alert also advises anyone not to walk, hike, and bike to this area alone. And if confronted, do your best to immediately de-escalate the situation and comply with the demands for property or cash to avoid injury. The Ethiopian Federal Police dismissed this US Embassy security alert by saying it is safe everywhere in Addis Ababa. So credit for this is US Embassy Ethiopia website. Two senior Oromo Liberation Front officials are under life-threatening medical condition in Ethiopian jail. According to several reports coming out of Ethiopia, Mr. Mikhail Boran and David Abdetta are suffering with unknown illness in jail, and their request for immediate medical attention is ignored by Ethiopian authorities. This and other senior Oromo Liberation Front officials were allowed to be released on bail bond, but the Abiy Ahmed undercover operatives and the federal police refused to comply with judge's order and forced these OLF officers to remain in jail. In the proper justice system, once the judge releases the accused, the police do not have the authority to put the accused back to jail. If that happens, the police face severe penalty for not obeying the judge's ruling. Law and order is broken everywhere in Ethiopia. No one is taking responsibility for citizens' mistreatment, including disappearance, torture, and the killings of innocent civilians or citizens. The accused killer of Artist Hachalu Hundessa, Mr. Tilahun Yami, has been taken to undisclosed location from where he has been jailed for the last 6 months. Mr. Tilahun Yami refused to cooperate with Abiy Ahmed's undercover operatives by lying or covering up under torture who killed Hachalu Hundessa. According to the reports coming out of Ethiopia, Mr. Tilahun Yami forced and also offered foreign trips opportunity if he blames Jawar Mohammed and Baqqala Garba for the killing of artist Hachalu Hundessa. The whereabouts of Mr. Tilahun is unknown after he secretly released the government's intention and the cover-up about the death of Hachalu Hundessa. He even implicated the government operatives for the killing of artist Hachalu Hundessa. Every Ethiopians, especially the Oromos, must follow the case of this courageous man and report to the International Human Rights Organization, United Nations, Amnesty International, and to any helpful country and organizations. The Abiy Ahmed undercover operatives might kill Mr. Tilahun Yami for exposing their undercover operations against this popular and beloved singer. No one has taken responsibility for the prisoners that have been taken out of their prison and killed, and their bodies thrown out by riverside or in the forest. So, Tilahun Yami, according to the reports coming out of Ethiopia, he refused to say Johar Muhammad and Baqqala Garba has a hand in the killing of Hachalu Hundessa, despite whatever the government offered him, including foreign trips and other benefits. He refused. And he implicated that the government has a hand in the killing of this very, very popular singer, Hachalu Hundessa. He could, so it is a very serious matter, and the government might silence this guy because he exposed them. And they say he is the one he killed. He say he didn't kill Hachalu, and he has no reason to kill Hachalu. So he just exposed the government, and he let the Oromos people know that he is not the killer of Hachalu Hundessa. So we have to follow it, and we have to report to the global community for his safety. President-elect Joe Biden announced a $1.9 trillion COVID-19 related relief aid package for Americans. His plan calls for spending $1,400 per person to eligible recipient. So we already, most of us already received 600 as a relief aid for COVID-19. So now the Democrats and the Biden try to raise it to 2,000. So the balance will be 1,400. So it's probably is going to be on the way very soon. The new payment would go to adult dependents that were left out of the earlier rounds, like some children over the age of 17. Okay, this is good. Unemployment payment will be $400 per week instead of $300 per week, which was approved in the last relief package. Biden plan would provide $25 billion in rental assistance for low and moderate income households who have lost jobs during the pandemic. President-elect Joe Biden's economic relief package contains so many other excellent supportive financial aids, such as money to help homeless, money for small business owners, for childcare expenses, money to assist in paying utility bills, money for schools and states, and money for COVID-19 vaccines operations, and money for many other projects. It's a lot of list, and it's a lot of hope, and it's gonna be helpful for, I hope so, for quick recovery of the nation. So 1.9 trillion is on the budget. So that's the reading part, and I will share a couple of videos with you, and and I will close it after that. So the first one is France 24 English News. This is the first one I want to share.
Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Ugandans turn out for a landmark election amidst an internet blackout. Former pop star Bobi Wine takes on President Yoweri Museveni's 35-year rule following a bloody campaign in which the leader's opponents were regularly targeted. Also, at least 80 people are killed in a raid on a village in western Ethiopia. Ethnic clashes elsewhere in the country have escalated amidst a security vacuum that followed federal troops' campaign in the northern Tigray region at the end of last year. And Thursday marks 10 years since Tunisia's Jasmine Revolution, which saw the toppling of former leader Zine El Abidine Ben Ali following a wave of protests. A decade on, the country has been held up as a rare example of democratic progress, but frustrations continue. But first, counting is underway in Uganda after voters turned out for the 10th presidential election amidst an internet blackout. Former pop star Bobi Wine is hoping to ride a groundswell of support from young Ugandans and unseat longtime leader Yoweri Museveni. He remains the frontrunner, though. After 35 years, he's seeking a sixth term in office. The campaign was marred by violent crackdowns on his rivals and critics. Dozens of people were killed amidst fears that the process would not be free or fair. Most Ugandans have only known one president. Grania Harrington has more.
Real demographic story in this election. So 75-year-old President Museveni in power since 1986, running for a sixth term in power. 80% of Ugandans are under the age of 40. Most of Uganda has never known another president. Most of them were born after President Museveni came to power. So there's been a real shock to the system to have somebody who represents this young generation running against the president for the first time. In the past, it's been people who have defected from his party, fought the Bush War that brought him to power originally, and candidates who were former friends and allies of the president who are running against him. So now this young contender who has managed to electrify the youth all over the country is running against him. Now, whether Bobi Wine's popularity, both as a singer and as a candidate with young people, translates into votes is a whole different story. I did hear in Kampala today, several people said to me that they'd seen a lot of young people coming out to vote. But it's very hard to get a clear picture of what's happening across the country because there's been an internet blackout.
Well, voting started late in some places as biometric machines were impacted by the internet shutdown that began on Wednesday night. Nanjala Nyabola is a journalist and the author of Digital Democracy Analog Policy, a book on Kenyan politics and the internet. She joins me now. Nanjala, when it comes to Uganda, it looks like the blackout affected the way that the polls were conducted. Do you think that this was an oversight on the part of authorities?
I don't know whether it was so much an oversight as it was collateral damage. I think that it was a failure to take the full impact of their decision under account. I feel like it seems like the opposition, the government, had started with a soft shutdown, but basically by shutting down mostly social media, and then sort of making VPNs illegal, and it sort of escalated as it seemed that the opposition was more and more determined to mobilize their supporters to get their people to come out to the polls. And now we see that they've implemented this internet shutdown without necessarily thinking through how it might affect, for example, the biometric voter registration, the voter identification, which is a critical part of delivering an election.
And how do you think the shutdown is going to affect the aftermath of the election?
It's difficult to say. I mean, the intention behind that, we can assume that the intention behind the shutdown was to be able to conduct, what we'd call nefarious activities without any oversight. Other shutdowns in other parts of the world have basically been used as a cover for human rights violation, and sometimes at a scale that is difficult to comprehend until after the fact. The longest running internet shutdowns in the world in Kashmir and Cameroon have run 2 years, 280 days, 250 days. And in that time, we saw widespread human rights violations, arbitrary arrests and detentions and killings. So it's difficult to say what the human rights impact of the shutdown is going to be. But in terms of the digital rights, we are already seeing the impact of people being taken offline, being unable to stay in touch with family members and friends, being able to stay updated even with what's happening with the election. I mean, communications have suffered. Media is not able to communicate, and we've seen people sort of taking terse action against the Ugandan government. We've seen some very stern statements coming out against the internet shutdown because it's definitely having effect on people, the quality of people's lives.
Beyond Uganda, Ethiopia, Chad, Cameroon, as you mentioned, Sudan, Algeria, DR, Congo, Zambia. Just why have we seen so many internet shutdowns in Africa over the last 5 years or so?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to point out that it's not just Africa. The country that has shut down the internet the most in the world is India, and it happens routinely in Kashmir. But beyond that, I think it's becoming the preferred tool of authoritarianism because the internet has become such a potent site for organizing, especially oppositions, especially critics of the state. The internet has opened up new channels of communications, new ways of associating, new communities of belonging, and I think they undermine the authoritarian state because it has for a long time been a place where they can't impose themselves, where they can't control the conversation. And so the internet shutdown is basically that last-ditch resort of an authoritarian who basically has nowhere else to go. And I think they're becoming more common in part also because of the complicity of private corporations. It's not, the government that is switching off the internet at source. It is corporations that are being put pressure. The pressure comes from the state, but it is actually in African countries where most people are connecting through mobile phones. It's the mobile phone companies that are actually complicit in the act of switching off the internet.
Thanks very much. Nanjala Nyabola there speaking to us from Kenya about the current internet shutdown affecting Uganda on its day of voting. On another news, at least 80 people were killed in a raid on a village in western Ethiopia this week. Gunmen rampaged through the community in Benishangul Gumuz region along the border with Sudan. Ethiopian troops have been diverted across the country to the Tigray region, where federal troops have been battling local fighters. As a result, some ethnic clashes elsewhere in the country have escalated amidst the security vacuum. Maria Gerth Nicolescu tells us more.
Tuesday's attack is the latest massacre in the Benishangul Gumuz region in western Ethiopia. According to the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission, at least 80 people were brutally killed in the Metakel zone of the region. According to eyewitnesses, victims include women, children, and elderly people, and the attack was carried out by members of the Gumuz ethnic group who were mainly targeting members of the Amhara and Agao ethnic groups who are minorities in the region. Massacres in the Benishangul Gumuz region have multiplied in recent months, mainly because of land disputes. On December 23rd, more than 100 people had also been killed in a similar attack right after the Ethiopian Prime Minister had visited the area in order to try and calm tensions. But this is only one of many major security threats across Ethiopia, with other regions, such as the Oromo region, also struggling with inter-ethnic violence, and in the northern Tigray region, fighting is still ongoing between government forces and the Tigray People's Liberation Front.
Maria Gerth Nicolescu there for us. Now, 5 people were killed in a bombing in eastern Algeria on Thursday. It was the deadliest attack on civilians in the country in several years. The homemade roadside explosive went off in the region of Tebessa as a car drove by. No one has yet claimed responsibility for the attack. And Thursday marks 10 years since Tunisia's Jasmine Revolution, which saw the toppling of former leader Zine El Abidine Ben Ali following a wave of protests. A decade on, the country has been held up as a rare example of democratic progress in the wake of the Arab Spring. But there is still widespread frustration amongst Tunisians that structural and economic problems have still not been sorted out. Our reporters went to meet 2 activists who took part in the uprising 10 years ago.
It's one of the many enduring images of Tunisia's uprising, one unemployed 21-year-old's way of speaking out against the Ben Ali system. A decade on, Wadi remembers the protests well.
مش ودي على يزق فسر 14 جان في الشعب التونسي كل الشباب كل الشعب التونسي ينصف 14 جانفي حديث في ضرابه تحل باب القفص طارت الحمامه عباره على تحررنا عباره كنا 23 سنه مربوطين في حبس مقهورين مذلولين مفقرين مهمشين.
With the old regime gone, Wadi turned his hand to politics, but swiftly became disillusioned. Now he's returned to activism.
10 سنين بعد الثوره ما تحقق حتى شيء، بالعكس زادنا التهميش، زادنا الفقر، زادنا الهم، زادنا بلاد داخله في حيط، الكبارات قاعده تسرق، اللي جاوا من برا اللي قالوا احنا شاركنا في الثوره، ويكم ماكم شاركتوا في الثوره، قلتوا ليه شاركنا حتى من بعيد وتكلمنا وعندنا جماعتنا وعندنا ويكم فما حتى شيء.
It was on the streets of Sfax's old town that Miriam lived out the revolution. These days she's a stylist, but continues to campaign.
الثورة عمرها ما كانت لحظة، الثورة هي مسار كامل. إذا اليوم باش نحصرها في 10 سنوات كهو كأني سكرت الملف بتاع المسار الثوري. المؤكد إنه مازال مش يتواصل ومازال باش يكمل. عندي عادة سنوية أنا كل سنة وين يجي ديسمبر نستحضر الفيديوهات الكل نرجع لهم. ريانكو باش نحاول اني نحافظ على النفس هذاك في روحي معناها باش ما ننساش.
On the rooftops where she stages her shootings, Miriam says many of the hopes of a decade ago have become reality.
حاجز الخوف معناها الثورة نحات لي حاجز ما عادش يهمني، مستعدة نعمل برشا حاجات قدام. تشوف توا الحيوت الجرافيتي وكل كينها باهية ولا خايبة ماهوش مشكل، المهم اللي فما شبيبة تحب تبدل، تحب تحدث تغيير، تحب تعبر.
Encouraged by the transition to democracy or feeling let down by it, in their own ways, Miriam and Wadi are both hoping for a better future.
Well, that's it for Iron Africa for now. Thanks for joining us, and do so again if you can. Take care.
Okay, thank you. That's France 24 English program. And the one report she mentioned about Ethiopia and the Tigray region is disqualifying the government claim about ending the war or the war is over long time ago. But as she reported and many other media reported, the war is still going on. The war is not over, even though several senior TPLF officials killed, arrested. The war is not over yet. So the Ethiopian government claimed the war is over just to run away from, to cheat the global community. So to avoid responsibility and the criticism by saying the war is over so early, but the war is not over. The war is still going on. And they lie on many issues, as concerned citizens media reported. They lied. They don't care about anything. They lie. They lie to stay in power. So nobody make them accountable for lying.
LibertyMutual.com to customize your car insurance.
Okay, I have one more video for today.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un
Let's see, this is North Korea.
The opening days of this ruling party Congress has mostly concentrated on his country's claimed achievements in the 5 years since the last Congress. But he referred again to the economic failings he admitted at the beginning of this gathering, the result of isolation from international sanctions and the global pandemic.
They could not say otherwise, because the situation is bad, and deteriorating very fast. And every single person in the country can easily see it every day. So denying it would be probably meaningless.
As a counter to such negative news, Kim was able to highlight big advances in his nuclear arsenal. He referred to new missile development, such as in submarine-launched weapon technology, and a new longer-range intercontinental ballistic missile capable of delivering multiple warheads with greater accuracy. Kim Jong-un also spoke about the need for the testing of new weapons, opening up the possibility of more provocative, longer-range missile launches that North Korea has suspended during the past few years of unprecedented summit diplomacy with South Korea and the United States. It's a far cry from the vague commitments to denuclearization made in the Singapore summit with US President Donald Trump just 2.5 years ago. And as he prepares for his successor, Joe Biden, to take over, Kim once again identified the United States as his country's biggest main enemy. Rob McBride, Al Jazeera, Seoul.
Okay. Okay. That was. Let's see. This is the last one. This.
Just want to say, as anybody that is out there and they know and believe in their heart that they.
This rare party congress has ended on a victorious note. While leader Kim Jong-un admitted his country's economic failings in the face of international sanctions and the global pandemic, he presided over an event without face masks, supporting claims of being completely coronavirus-free. Kim also promised to develop more sophisticated nuclear weapons.
We must do everything we can to strengthen our nuclear deterrence and develop the strongest military power.
He also committed to developing new technologies like nuclear-powered submarines, seemingly a challenge to the incoming US President-elect, Joe Biden.
I kind of feel in some ways that those are, in the first place, aspirational, and in the second place, I think they're perhaps technologies that are being put on the table perhaps as a part of a bargaining strategy, in some sense saying, if you don't want us to develop these, maybe you should think about sanctions relief.
This Congress also promoted Kim to the position of Party General Secretary, elevating him to the same level as his father and grandfather. While his sister, Kim Yo-jong, who has been gaining in power in recent years, received a slight demotion, possibly as a rebuke for the souring of relations between North and South Korea. But as the Congress drew to a close, Kim Yo-jong showed her continuing influence by attacking the South, calling the authorities here idiots for having allegedly hostile attitudes to the North. In his New Year address this week, South Korean President Moon Jae-in remained hopeful of reviving the summit diplomacy of the past few years that he largely instigated.
언제든 어디서든 만나고. Our will to meet anytime, anywhere, and even in a contactless way remains unchanged.
But with just a week left of the Trump administration, both North and South Korea wait to see what direction the new Biden administration will take with their future relations. Rob McBride, Al Jazeera, Seoul.
Okay, thank you to Al Jazeera. That's the challenge for Biden's for incoming administration, how they're gonna deal with North Korea. Very small country, but very powerful with a nuclear power. So there is a challenge over there between South and North Korea. The other challenge is for Biden administration is as concerned citizens media reported before, is Cuba. Just the Trump administration put under state sponsor of terrorism to make it harder for Biden to deal with them. It was good at Obama time, open dialogue, visit. It was encouraging for both nations, but Trump reversed it. Trump also reversed the US Iran issue by coming out of the nuclear agreement, putting sanctions back on the table, stiffening the economy of Iran. So these are some of the challenges for Joe Biden administration and for the American people as a general. It concerns the American people. It should concern the American people too, because anything the government does is gonna affect. If they don't resolve in a diplomatic manner, they will lead to conflict, war. Then, when that happens, it will come to us, to our children, or to our grandchildren. It happened already in Afghanistan, Iraq, and other places. The other issue is still quiet, is between Israeli and the Palestinians issue. That one is quiet for now. Israel is expanding its relationship with the neighboring Arab countries, getting more recognition. Palestinians are losing more lands as the year passes. They are losing their supports. Arab League is dead. So that is the one also we have to watch it carefully and see in which direction it's heading. Is it the settlement will continue, or is it the Palestinians will have a chance to establish their own state and then stop the expansion of Israelis? Okay, so that's all I have for today. Thank you for taking the time with me, and share, subscribe, like, dislike, comment on my videos so we can make it grow like a big giant media in the future. Share with your friends, family members. Concerned Citizens Media will expand, it will develop if all of you play a part in sharing factual news, commenting, you know. So we will see, and it is all designed to play its part in creating peace and stability in Ethiopia, to end bloodshed, the cycle of violence in that country, the killing of each other in that country. So Concerned Citizens Media is established to raise these concerns to Ethiopians and to the global community. So to control these things before they get out of control. Now Ethiopia is a different country really under Abiy Ahmed. Is really nowhere is peace. People are jailed, people are killed, war going on, and massacre going on in Oromia, Benishangul, in other areas. It's terrible to hear all this. So that's all I have for today. So long, everyone. I will be back with other news and videos.